number 1 is no solution. You do have to write contradiction when that happens. Number 2 was all real numbers identity. Okay, the actual answer is the no solution or the all real numbers. And then in the directions I said if it's an identity or a contradiction, I wanted you to label it. The rest of these, if you get a number, what are those called? Conditionals. Number 3 is -9. Number 4, -23 over 4, or -5.75. 5 is 0. 6, I have 2az minus 3by divided by a plus 5b. Okay, it is also correct if you have the exact opposite sign on everything. So -2az, positive 3by, -a, -5b. Number 7 is 7/4. Number 8, radical 65. I do not want decimals from the distance formula. I want you to keep it as an exact answer in radical form. Number 9, -3 1/2. Number 10, 7x minus 4y equals -23. 11, y equals 7/4 x plus 23 over 4. 12, x equals 2. Part A is x equals -2. Part B, y equals radical 3. 13, A, y equals 5/4 x minus 7. B, y equals -4/5 x plus 6/5. Again, if you miss it, mark it so we can talk about it. Alright, 14a, domain -infinity to infinity with parentheses. Range -infinity to 4 with a bracket. Your x-intercepts are 0 and 4. You could have given me ordered pairs. They would be 0, 0, and 4, 0. Y-intercept is 0, or if you did the ordered pair, that's 0, 0. B, domain -infinity to infinity, range -infinity to 4 with a bracket. Your x-intercepts are at -1 and 3, whereas ordered pairs, that's -1, 0, and 3, 0. Y-intercept is 2 or 0, 2 if you did ordered pairs. C, domain -infinity to 4 with a bracket. Range -infinity to 0 with a bracket. X-intercept is 4 or 4, 0. Y-intercept is -2 or 0, -2. 15, A is 0, B -2, C 0. 16a -12, B -a squared minus a minus 10. 17, if you change it to y equals mx plus b form, your y-intercept is 4, slope is -3/4. Domain and range are both -infinity to infinity. Slope is that -3/4. 18, if you solve for y, you get y equals -6, so it's a horizontal line. Domain -infinity to infinity. Range is just the -6. Slope of a horizontal line is 0. Okay, number 19. You have your two squares. You get the original square was 13 inches by 13 inches. Number 20, there are 50 pounds of the extra lean or the 7% hamburger. 21, there's 55,000 at 11.5% and 35,000 at the 12%. And 22, part A, your C of x is 3x plus 2,300. Part B, revenue is 5.5x. Part C, you set those equal and you get 920. All right, problem number 2. If you missed it, then I want you to be correcting it as we go, or if it's easier, you can do it on another sheet of paper. But I don't want you to just sit back with your arms crossed right now. We are studying for our test, so work with me. All right, what do we do first? Distribute. So 0.2 times 5 gives me a 1x. 0.2 times -4 is -0.8. A problem that I saw on the quiz, right here, what do we need to distribute? A -0.1. If you need to, write it as plus a negative so you remember. So that's -0.6, Negative 0.1 times a negative 3 is a positive 0.3x. Okay, these we add, so 1x and 0.3x would be 1.3x. Negative 0.8 and negative 0.6 is negative 1.4. Subtract over your 1.3x. Those both cancel, so we get negative 1.4 equals negative 1.4. The x's are gone, that's a true statement, so what does that mean? All real numbers, and we call that identity.
If we have 1.3x minus 1.4 equals 1.3x minus 1.4, if we just know it's
Yep. If you recognize it there, that's the same on both sides, that's fine. All right. Number 4. Alright, so if I look at this one, I've always told you we can either get rid of the fraction or deal with it. And it doesn't matter to me, most of the time you guys opt to get rid of it. Is that what you want to do here? So if I'm looking at my denominators, I have a 5 and a 2. What could I multiply by to get rid of this? 10. But you have to do it to everything. That includes that 5 out there. So we have a 5 times 10, which gives us 50, minus here, 10 divided by 5 is 2. So we're going to have to distribute a 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5, so here we have to distribute a 5. Okay. Think of this as a negative 2 if you need to. So we have distributing negative 2. So that's a negative 6x plus 8. Add like terms. So we get 58 minus 6x equals 35 minus 10x. So I can add over my 10x. Subtract my 58. Divide by 4, and x is negative 23 over, or negative 5.75.
If we have to put the decimal on the test, will that be okay, or do you want us to do a fraction?
The only time I'm going to care is if it's not a nice decimal and you rounded it.
Okay.
So if you give me the complete decimal, that's fine.
Okay.
We are going to turn in these study guides tomorrow too, so just make sure that you do have it all done and you bring it with you. Is this one okay with everybody? I have a feeling if you made a mistake, it was most likely negatives. That tends to be the main problem I see when I look at these.
What if you have the negative on 4?
That's fine, just need to move things to the other side. Okay. Number 5. So what do we do?
Distribute.
So we get negative 24x plus negative 32 or minus 32 plus 6x. Here we have 4x minus 32 plus 4x. So add like terms, we get negative 18x minus 32. Over here, 4x plus 4x equals 8x minus 32. So now what?
Or subtract.
Yeah, get x on the same side. If you add your 32, we get negative 26x equals 0. Divide by negative 26, and x is 0. Problem 6. Okay, there will be one like this on the test, but probably not quite as challenging. So I'll have solving for a variable. This one I'm asking you to solve for x, and there are 2 x's in the problem. You know, on the test, I might give you an equation like this and say solve for the y, where there was only one of them. So I put this on study guide, but I'd probably be a little bit easier question that I would put on the test. What do I need to do first?
Get the other x to the other side.
We need our x's on the same side. And since this doesn't have an x, I'm going to move it over. These aren't like terms, so it's just ax plus 5bx equals 2az minus 3by. Okay, now, we weren't able to actually add those. Something wrong?
No.
Okay. So what could we do here? Take out that x. Yeah. So then you have x times something. Opposite of multiplying is divide. So x equals 2az minus 3by over 8 plus 5. So that takes us through the first page. Any questions about that stuff? Let's talk about, the second page is all about lines. So I'll be asking you a lot of this stuff on your test. We didn't ask about number 7, finding the slope. Did everybody get the 7/4 on that? Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay. The distance and midpoint formulas will be given to you for the test, so you don't have to memorize those. So they're on the dry erase board over there. Question number 8 says the distance, so that's our distance formula. All right, my 2 points were -5, -3, and -1, 4. So this is like the x of the first and the y of the first, the x of the second and the y of the second. So if I plug these into my distance formula, we get x sub 2, so -1, minus -5, so plus 5 squared, plus y sub 2 is 4 minus -3, or 4 plus 3 squared. Is everyone with me here? So if we plug that in, -1 plus 5 is 4 squared, 4 plus 3 is 7 squared. So you get 16 plus 49 for the square root of 65. I expect you to reduce this if it can't. So we're seeing, is it divisible by a perfect square? Like 4, 9, 16, 25. None of those go in it evenly, so this is our answer. So you will have to do this on your test. You'll have the distance formula, you just have to know how to use it. I'll also ask you to find a midpoint on your test. So it's again just putting into our formula. Midpoint formula is x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2, y sub 1 plus y sub 2 divided by 2. It's just like averaging. So for my points, the x of my two order pairs, -5 and -1. The y's of my order pairs, -3 and 4. So that gives me -6 divided by 2 is -3. +1 divided by 2, so 1/2 or 0.5. Is that okay? Then I asked for the equation of the line. We know that the slope is 7/4. We found that in question 7. And you have to take one of your 2 points, so I'll just use the first one. Okay. Then you plug into y equals mx plus b. So y equals m times x plus b. So if I add that over, so your equation is y equals 7/4 x plus 23 over 4. That's the slope-intercept form, which is actually what question number 11 asked for. Now I want you to put that in standard form. Standard form is ax plus by equals c. In that, a, b, and c have to be integers. So no fractions, no decimals. And a has to be positive. So first I need my x and y on the same side. So I'm going to subtract over my 7/4 x. Now, if I want to get rid of the fraction, what do we have to multiply by? The 4 gets rid of the fraction, and I need my x to be positive, so we'll multiply everything by -4. That gives me a positive 7x, a -4y, and a -23. And that is the standard form.
So the b of the slope-intercept form is the c on the standard form.
You just have to get rid of the fraction. Any other questions? So then we continued with writing equations of lines. Question number 12, it doesn't look like I gave you a lot of information, but you really have everything you need. I gave you an order pair. And then I asked for the equations of 2 different lines. Okay, if you need to, think about what this means. -2 radical 3 is on your line. If I want the vertical line going through that, I'm talking about this line. What's the equation of a vertical line? X equals something. If it's going through this point, what's the x value? -2. I didn't ask for it here, but what's the slope of a vertical line?
0 or
Undefined. Vertical is undefined. X equals a number. Alright, horizontal line. So the horizontal line going through this looks like that. What's the equation of a horizontal line? So if it goes through this point, my y is radical 3. I didn't ask for it, but what is the slope of a horizontal line? Good. Is problem 12 okay? Where x equals is vertical, y equals is horizontal. 13, we have a point, and we're comparing to this line. So part A is parallel. What do you know about parallel lines? Settings. Okay, so what is the slope of this line? So for parallel, that slope doesn't change, it's still 5/4. So now we just plug into y equals mx plus b. So my y is -2, m is 5/4, x is 4 plus b. Subtract your 5, so your y-intercept is -7. So our line is 5/4 x minus 7. Is that one okay? Part B, I want perpendicular. Perpendicular, you have to do the opposite reciprocal. So change the sign and flip it. Then plug into y equals mx plus b. So -2 equals -4/5 times 4 plus b. Add 16/5 to each side. And you get 6/5 for the y-intercept. So your final equation, y equals your slope was the -4/5 x plus your y-intercept, 6/5. So I'm going to ask you questions like that. You know, writing those equations, knowing the difference between parallel and perpendicular. Any issues with that stuff?
Well, every single question on the study gotta be on the test.
Well, not necessarily, but
I'm not.
same types of questions, yes.
Okay.
I don't intentionally try to trick you, but it's not like I just take study guide and change numbers.
Yeah.
All right, so next page, number 14. We asked about B and C with this one. So 14B, let's see if I can draw a really rough sketch of this here. Alright, so our graph looks something like this. So the first thing I asked for is the domain. Domain is talking about as I go left to right, what values do I hit? I will want interval notation with this. You guys all with me? So as I go from left to right, this is going forever in the negative direction, that's going forever in the positive direction, so what do we end up hitting? When you write that interval notation, infinities always get parentheses. Okay, your range. It's talking about your y's. When you do the y's, you go from the bottom up. This is going down forever, so it's coming from negative infinity, and it stops when we get to 4, positive 4. Would that get a parenthesis or a bracket?
Bracket.
Bracket, because it's a point, we equal that 4. Alright, x-intercepts. You're telling me where you hit the x-axis. So if I look, I hit my x-axis right here and right here. I don't care if you list those values or if you write the order pairs, however you prefer. So the two places we hit the x-axis are, so So you could just list them. If you do ordered pairs, the y is 0. So either way is fine. Y-intercept. Where do we hit the y-axis? At 2. So if you did that as an ordered pair, it would be 0, 2.
What would you prefer us to do?
It doesn't matter a bit to me.
Does it matter in the long run?
Nope. Just as long as you could write them as ordered pairs if asked to, then that's all I care about. Okay. So C looks like this. Domain is left to right. And as you go from the left, this is going forever in the negative direction, so it's coming from negative infinity. And it stops when you get right here at 4, parenthesis or bracket. Bracket because it's a closed circle, we equal that number. Alright, the range. Talking about my y's. So this is going down forever, so it's coming from negative infinity. And it stops when we get to 0. Closed circle, so it's a bracket.
What if it was an open circle?
Then you would do a parenthesis. X-intercept. Where do we hit the x-axis? Y-intercept. Where do we hit the y-axis?
2.
Any questions there?
Can you do like a diagram?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so A was just like our parabola. So domain. As you go from left to right, this is going forever in both directions, so it would be your range. It's going down forever, so it's coming from negative infinity and stops at parenthesis or bracket. X-intercept. Where does this hit the x-axis? 0, 0, and 4, 0. If you did order pairs, or you could just list at 0 and at 4. Y-intercept. Where do you hit the y-axis? Or you could just list the y value 0. Alright, so 15 asks you to find f of 4 on each of those. So that's saying if you go to this graph, f of 4 means if x equals 4, y equals blank. So you're basically finding the point on your graph when your x is 4 and tell me what the y is there. So on B, it is -2. On C, when my x is 4, I'm right here on the graph, and my y is 0. On A, when my x is 4, I'm right here on the graph, so y is 0. If I asked for, let me just give you another one. On, let's say, find f of 0. So what does that mean?
Find where 0 is.
When x is 0, tell me what the y is. So on A, it would be 0. On B, when my x is 0, my y is 2. On C, when my x is 0, my y is -2. So when I give you that notation, I'm giving you the x, you're telling me the y. Does everybody understand that?
What would it look like if you're like telling us the y?
I would say find x where f of x equals something. So that would be like saying when your y is 2, tell me what your x is. I'll do that.
On that one, how did we get 2 for that one? If it was at 4 for A?
Oh, this was B, graph B,
Oh,
because remember I did those in a different order. Other questions there? All right, then we went on to question 17, that's the next one you asked about. 16, just make sure that function notation, all you're doing is taking whatever I gave you and plugging it in for your x. So if I say f of 3, you make your x a 3. If I say f of a plus 1, you make your x a plus 1, and simplify. So on 17, we have 3x plus 4y equals 16. If you want to graph a line, what should you do with that? Solve, so it's y equals mx plus b form. So if we subtract our 3x, divide everything by 4, so y equals negative 3/4 x plus 4. So when you graph a line, you start at the y-intercept, which was 4. Slope was negative 3/4, so that means you go down 3, right 4. And you've got 2 points, so you can graph your line. I asked you some questions about that. So domain, as I go from left to right, this graph extends in both directions, so it would be range, same thing, because it's going up and down forever. M is just our slope, which is
Wait, doesn't the line stop at 4? Like going up, or is that?
no, that's just your y-intercept. The lines continue forever in both directions. Okay. Next question we asked about was number 19. Alright, so we have the length of each side of a square. So I'm talking about a square, so if we draw our picture, what do you know about a square?
All sides are even.
All the sides are even. Is decreased by 4. So I'm taking my square and I'm going to make it smaller. Okay, so this was my original square. Here's my new square. We made it smaller. Do I know how big the sides were to start with? So those are x. Then if it's decreased by 4, it is now x minus 4. Okay, then it says the perimeter. How do you get perimeter? Perimeter of the new. So I can either write x minus 4 4 times or just say 4 times x minus 4. Means equals 10. More than means half the perimeter of the original. What's the perimeter of the original one?
4.
So we get 4x minus 16 equals 10 plus 2x. Subtract over the 2x, add the 16, divide by 2, and x is 13. You always have to answer the question. I asked what is the perimeter or the dimensions of the original. So that was my x. So the original sides were 13 inches long. realtor borrowed $90,000 to develop some property. And so we're talking about interest here. So we do principal times rate times time equals interest. Okay, so I'm just going to label these my first, my second, my total. He started with $90,000. Where does that go?
The total.
Total principal. He was able to borrow part of the money at 11.5%. Did I say how much? So that would be X. My rate would be,
1.15.
and the rest at 12%. Okay. If you know that you have 90,000 total and you've already used X, how do you figure out what's left? And then this would be 0.12. So our tables are kind of set up one of two ways. Either I give you the total, so if I said like your total was 50, the first one is X and the second one is 50 minus X. Or I give you the two things. If I said X was the first and 50 was the second, what would you do for your total? Yeah, you add them. So you just have to pay attention to what numbers you're given and where they go.
Would that be on the interest one too, or the?
It could technically, most of the time that was on the mixture problems that it was set up that way. But the mixture problems also could be, where we have to subtract, just depending on what number I gave you. The annual interest. Annual is how many years? Is 10,525. So that is my total interest. So then we just follow the formula. It says you multiply and on these and the mixture problems, we know we just add the first two to equal the total. So combine like terms. Question was how much was borrowed at each rate. So X was my amount at 11.5%. Second one, 90,000 minus 55,000. Be 35,000 at 12%. Problem number 20. So this was a mixture problem, so we do the amount times the concentration equals the amount pure. Label your rows whatever you like. First, second, total is a popular choice. And then we go through our problem. It says, how many pounds of extra lean hamburger that is 7% fat? So I said how many pounds? So I do not know. So that is my X. 7% would be must be mixed with 30 pounds of hamburger that is 15% fat. So this amount is, and this would be, to obtain a mixture that is 10%. So my grand total concentration is 0.10. Remember, the total one will always fall in between those other two numbers. What would I put for my amount here? Good. What if I had said how much 7% should be mixed with 15% to get 30 pounds of the 10%? So then where would my 30 be? On the total one. So then what would you have to do for your second one?
30 minus X.
30 minus X. So you just have to watch if I'm giving you one of the two or the grand total. So then we multiply. And we always add the first two to equal the total.
You know, X plus 30 would matter if it's 30 plus X.
It would not. Either one is fine. So if I subtract over my 3 and subtract my 0.07. Back 0.03, and you get 50. So the question was how many pounds of the extra lean? If I look back at my problem, that was my X. Any other?
What was the answer to 16B?
Negative a squared minus a minus 10. Do you want to look at it?
Yeah.
Okay, so in 16b, you're asked to find f of a minus 3, and you're told that f of x is negative x squared minus 7x minus 22. So what that means is you go to your function, and you replace your x with a minus 3. Now, when you see a minus 3 squared, what does that mean?
Twice.
So if you write that twice, you have to FOIL. So you get a squared minus 3a, and minus 3a is minus 6a plus 9. I can distribute my negative 7, so negative 7a plus 21 minus 22. There's a negative in front of this, so you have to run your negative through. And then we just add like terms. So 6a and negative 7a is negative 1a. Negative 9 plus 21 minus 22 is negative 10. So on A, we had f of negative 5. So that means you go to your equation, you replace your x with a negative 5. So we have the opposite of, what's negative 5 squared? So when you do the opposite of that, we just get negative 25. Negative 7